Good morning. Today I want to give one more example of the type of calculations you can do with the time value of money concept. And in particular, we're going to talk about future value of investments. It's one of my big ideas I want you to take away from this class. I have a spreadsheet I've made, and I'm going to upload it to the Sakai site. I want to walk you through the ideas in the spreadsheet. Um, you could play around with the spreadsheet at a later date. What I really want you to take away from this is the idea of the importance of early and often savings and what it can mean for your retirement. And I know when you're 21, this seems like a million miles away. It is a long ways away for most of you. On the other hand, because it's a long ways away, you can have a dramatic impact on your retirement via the time value of money idea. In the spreadsheet, what I have is here at the top, you can see I have some parameters you're going to be able to play with. I assume right now that at age 25, your starting income is $30,000. So if you think that's too low, you're going to start at a higher income level. You should feel free to change that value. I just chose what I thought was kind of a conservative basic value that a lot of undergraduates graduating might start at. I assume I want you to enter what you think your salary is going to grow at on average during your work career. I want you to enter what you think the inflation rate is, and I also want you to enter what you think your return on investments. Personally, I think I'm quite conservative in all these numbers. I think probably for many of you, over the course of your career, you can expect more than a 3.5% salary increase. I have the inflation rate at 3%. So basically, I have that this hypothetical worker is really only making slightly more salary increase than the inflation rate. That's not true for the typical worker. While that is true later in your work career, your salary increases will basically be at the inflation rate, maybe slightly higher. For most people early in their work career, their salaries increase by significantly more than the inflation rate. But again, that's something you can play around with to see how the numbers change. I also believe for many people, the 8% return on investment is probably too low. We're going to talk about investments far, far later in this course. It wouldn't be unrealistic with proper asset allocation. You could easily earn 10% nominal. The other thing I have right here is in the spreadsheet here in this cell right here, you can enter whether you want all your numbers in real dollars or nominal. So for those of you who have not taken economics, that's perfectly fine. Not a prerequisite for the class. Let me take a minute and tell you the difference. In real dollars, we're accounting for all of the calculations in terms of after accounting for the inflation rate. So for instance, let's just see if I change your salary is going to grow by 3%, and that's exactly the same as the inflation rate. Okay, so in some sense, you're going to move along in your work career, but you're really not having any real increase in your salary. Your salary is going up, but it doesn't increase your purchasing power. Your salary is increasing by just the same amount as the inflation. And so you can see here, when it's in nominal dollars, it's as if when you're 26, the second year of your working life, you're making $30,900, and that's true. That would be your salary at the end of the year, but in fact is the same purchasing power as the 30,000 when you were 25. Similarly, if you go down to when you're 31, your salary will have risen, if it's growing by 3% per year, to $35,822. Well, that's excellent. That's great. However, it really is the same as the $30,000 was, 6 years earlier. So if you want to have everything in real, we just change right there, and you can see that now all the values here are adjusted, and it's as if you're making $30,000 because all the future values here that are being calculated in these later years, and you can see I have your salary going all the way out to 64. I'm imagining you're going to retire at 65. In this little example, you can see it's $30,000. Depending upon what kind of tables you look at, sometimes you'll have people present data to you in nominal, which means not accounting for inflation, or real. So you can see that if I'm doing things in terms of real, my investments, so the savings, are giving you 8%. But after inflation, that would just be 5%. That's 8% minus 3% is 5%. So your savings will be growing at only 5% per year return rather than 8%. To start with, let's just look at nominal returns. That's kind of how a typical conversation would go. And I'll say, suppose your salary increases here by 4%. So your salary is gonna grow slightly more than the inflation rate. And what I have here in the table is 3 hypothetical savings rates. Here I'm assuming you're going to save 10% of your income. So 10% of $30,000 is $3,000. Or I'm considering a kind of a slightly higher saver, 15%. That would mean you're saving $4,500 of your $30,000 income. And finally, the 20% rate would be you're saving $6,000. 20% of $30,000 is $6,000. Okay, and what you can see here as we go down is in each year. So you can see when you're 35, this row right here tells you that you'd be making $44,407. Okay, and this right here would tell you what you would save if you're saving 10%. This next over here will tell you what you're saving if you're saving 15%. And finally, this third column over here will tell you what you'd be saving if you were saving 20%. And you can scroll down through the years. So each entry in this part of the table is your annual savings for that year. And over here on the right, I've done the future value calculations. This calculation, we have a spreadsheet that you're going to find very useful that I uploaded on Sakai. It has all the time value calculations built in. These are also formulas that are built into Excel, so you can look at the formulas I did here. What this tells you right here is if you invest $3,000 for 40 years, that is from 25 to 65, at an 8% interest rate, you'll have $65,174 when you're 65. That's just from this 1 year of savings. The $3,120 that you save at 26, this will be able to grow at 8% for 39 years. So this investment right here will return when you're 65. This will contribute $62,760. Okay, so the calculations over here are taking this amount of money and projecting what it would be worth in the future. Using in Excel, it's the future value calculation, FV. Okay, and you can look at that. Okay, and you can scroll to the bottom. Okay, so for me, I would say this is a person who's has a very basic income. $30,000 is not a huge income level. It's respectable, but it's would seemingly going to be difficult in many ways to get by. But if you save 10% of your income, and you are actually a worker of only starting off at kind of a modest $30,000, and your salary only grows slightly higher than the inflation rate, what you'll see is that when you retire, you're going to have $1.37 million in your investment saving account that you'll be able to use for your retirement. If you save 15%, the middle column, you would have $2 million, $2.056 million. And if you were to save 20%, okay, you would have $2.7 million. Okay, so here's a worker that I would describe as a very, not a super high income worker, okay? And that's why if you were asking me, I would say that the minimum you should be saving towards your retirement when you start working is 10%. That's my rule of thumb. I would tell you you want to shoot for 10% savings. I actually would feel much more comfortable about how you're going to be when you retire if you can make 15%. 20% would be a high savings rate. Now, amazingly enough, the typical American saves less than 5% of their income. And you can see that's why as we move forward in the class, we're going to talk about that there's kind of a looming retirement crisis. People do not have pensions. Most workers do not have pensions anymore. The only money they're going to have are through the money they're saving either on their own or through their company's retirement 401k or 403. And these are terms we haven't yet gone over yet in class. But you need to be saving money on your own. And if you were to save, for instance, 10%, now due to inflation, okay, not taking into account, your salary's growing, and when you're 64, okay, so 40 years later, your $30,000 salary has grown to $138,000, okay? Part of that's inflation, part of that's your real growth due to the fact that your savings is growing by 4% and your inflation rate's only 3%. A typical rule of thumb is that when you retire, you can withdraw 4% of how much you have saved. So if you save 10% your whole life, okay, and that would mean you'd have $1.37 million. That would mean you'd have enough to withdraw $54,832 each year in your retirement. And if you added in whatever Social Security would be worth in 40 years, probably at that point, your annual Social Security take would probably be $50,000 at least, probably higher than that. You'll see that you'll be able to reproduce most of your last year's income. Okay, if you were to save at what I consider a more comfortable savings rate for your retirement, that is the 15% rate, you'd be able to have $82,000. Again, if you add in what Social Security will be for you in 40 years, this would mean you'd have basically your old income, about your last year's income, $138,000 when you're working. This would make you, as compared to your working life, this would make you really comfortable in your retirement. And finally, if you're able to be a very aggressive saver, a 20% saver, you could actually retire with $109,000, almost $110,000 of annual income. Okay, add in Social Security, you're actually probably be better off. So you'd be able to do more travel in your retirement, take care of unforeseen health expenses, etc. Now, I do want to say that all of this right now is in these nominal dollars. If you're wondering, well, what does this really mean in terms of real dollars, inflation adjustments? Okay, all I'm doing is just in the spreadsheet, change this to the word real. All the numbers get recalculated. Okay, so now your salary is really only growing by 1% a year, right? 4% minus 3% is 1%. So your salary just grows by 1% each year, and your return, how your savings is going to grow, which is calculated over here, is going to grow at 5%, the 8% minus 3%. And you can see, therefore, you're going to, all these are real dollars. So after 40 years of working, your salary has climbed to about $44,000 in real dollars. That's equivalent to your current $30,000. And at that point, your investments have grown to $437,000, which would give you about $17,000 in real equivalent dollars in your retirement. Again, the 15% savings rate gives you $26,000. And if you think about Social Security right now, a worker can expect somewhere around $30,000 a year. So assuming Social Security grows at the inflation rate, so in other words, it's constant. If you add 30,000 to this amount, you'd have just about your last year of income, and that would make you comfortable in your retirement. This would be a much sweeter spot. Okay, the 15% savings rate. You can play around in this spreadsheet if you think that you can make 11% on your retirement savings, and you think your salary is going to grow at 6%, and you're going to have a $50,000 a year starting salary. Okay, all of those are, I actually believe, realistic numbers for a lot of undergraduates. You're going to be able to start at $50,000, grow, salary will grow over time, and your return on investments properly done could be 11%. You can see even in real dollars, you're going to end up with well over $1 million in your retirement. So I titled this spreadsheet, do you want to be a millionaire? You don't need to be on a game show to become a millionaire, even with what I would call solid middle class income. $50,000 is middle class income. It's a good salary, but you're not Donald Trump. Thank God you guys are not Donald Trump. You're way better than that. But what I would say for middle class income, a long-term saver can easily become a millionaire. Okay, it is not beyond your ability or grasp. All it requires is planning, okay, in regular savings. All right, so I'm going to upload this spreadsheet. I'm going to upload this video, and maybe you can play around with this, and when you graduate and get your job, be motivated to save. That would be a tremendous outcome. All right. Have a good day, guys. Bye-bye.